views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Hello, welcome to my show. This is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page. Today we have a special guest on Zoom, Mr. Michael Ivankovich, who is a professional appraiser. Yeah, welcome to my show, Michael.
Hey, Patty, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We have a number of questions for you, sir.
I'm ready for them. Let's go.
Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Binghamton, New York, upstate New York. Born there in 1951, and was there until I went to college, and been in Pennsylvania for about the last maybe 40 years.
You're about a year older than me. Who influenced you while you were growing up?
Clearly my parents.
Yeah, what they do?
Well, when I was a kid, we never had any money. You know, we were not a rich family. We never had any antiques, but they were good, honest, God-fearing people, and they taught me well. And when I went away to school, they worked hard to get me to college, and I was able to get through college. And it was after that point I started getting interested in antiques, probably because we never had them before, but they weren't a priority in our family.
And we are antiques now, eh, kid?
I'm sorry?
We are antiques now, aren't we?
Speak for yourself, young lady. I'm still pretty chipper.
Oh, bye. Oh, so the schools that you went to, was it like regular school? I mean, high school, public school?
I went to high school in Binghamton, and then I went off to Rider College, which was in Trenton, New Jersey.
What's
and actually,
that?
technically Lawrenceville, which is right outside of Trenton. And I was a business student. I wish I had studied harder and played less, but I was in college during the late 60s.
Oh, boy.
Vietnam, protest marches, all that other stuff. And I think if there was one thing I would do differently in my life, I would have gone to college to study harder and play less.
Did you go overseas to be in Vietnam, or?
I did not. I had drawn a good draft number. Back in those days, we had the draft, and your lottery was based on your birthday. And I was fortunate to have drawn a good draft number. And I don't think when I was younger, I didn't nearly appreciate those who served as much as I do today.
So what was your first job when you left college?
First job when I was left college, I was selling insurance. I had a brief stint out in Denver, Colorado, and I ended up trying to sell insurance for Mutual of Omaha. And I realized that I wasn't a very good insurance salesman. So eventually I went to work for Prudential, and I was there for about 15 years, and Prudential exposed me to direct marketing for the first time. At that point, Prudential had the AARP group health insurance contract. I gravitated into direct marketing, which was pre-internet days, and it changed my life. I fell in love with the whole business, and it changed the way I did business at the time.
So when did you become really interested in being in appraising items and such?
Well, I mean, it was a gradual thing. I mean, certainly you can't appraise anything you didn't grow up with and don't know.
Right.
So I followed the route that most people did. I started as a collector, and my passion early on was Wallace nutting, hand-colored photographs, early 20th century hand-tinted photographs. And I went from one picture to hundreds at my peak. And Sue, my wife, and I attended an auction one time, and the auctioneer did a horrible job representing a consignor of nuttings. And so we said at that point, we could do a better job than he did. And that's what we did. We became auctioneers.
Auctioneers. Oh.
For Wallace nuttings. We specialized. And then one thing led to the next, but eventually we evolved from being only auctioneers to auctioneers and appraisers. And that's where we are today.
So appraising. What kind of subjects did you appraise?
Well, we've tried to become generalists. I mean, as you saw in our What's It Worth Zoom class,
Right.
there's not much we can't appraise. I always tell people nobody knows it all. I mean, even on the TV, Antiques Roadshow, those guys don't know it all. You know, they come in with a Native American blanket. Well, what they do behind the scenes is contact the appraiser there who has the most knowledge in Native American blankets. He or she then does their homework, researches it, and then comes in front of the camera and acts like they know it all. Nobody knows it all. I wish I did. I'm a good generalist, but I don't know it all. But if I don't know it all, I usually know where to look, or I try to surround myself with people who know more than I do.
That's good, because it's a teamwork. It's not really all by yourself.
Absolutely.
When
You
I
look
wrote it-
behind me, and that's what I do. What's it worth? That's what most people want to know. What's it worth? I can't
Yes.
tell people what to do with it, but I can tell them approximately what it may be worth today, and I can certainly look up comps for what it was worth in the past. Have you ever done an interview with a realtor, Patty?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, realtor, if you wanted to sell your house, if Patty wanted to sell her house, a realtor's not going to just come to your house and put a number on it.
Right.
Okay. They're going to look for comps. What have comparable houses in your neighborhood sold for recently? That's what we as appraisers do. We look for comps. If you have a piece of art by Whistler, we look for what is a comparable art in terms of size, subject matter, medium. What is that sold for recently? And then we come up with a ballpark number, trying, zeroing in that way.
Let's talk about history of antiques. Where did you learn to, and how did you learn about antiques and how old they are? You went to, like you said, you have a team. You wouldn't know yourself, or you would take a history course or something.
Not a history course. I surrounded myself back in those days when I was getting started.
Yeah.
The primary medium for learning this business were books, antique and collectible reference books. There were a number of companies who specialized in producing antique reference books, and anybody who knew a lot about a subject could write a book fairly easily. Okay, but antique reference books today, which is where I learned about the business, have become outdated by the internet, which is much more current.
Our internet. How do you look up antiques?
There's a lot of different ways, Paige. Let me back up a minute, okay?
Okay.
Let's just say you wanted to research, or I wanted to research Wallace nutting hand-colored photos, which is what I did. I could go to a price guide, okay? But the dirty secret with price guides is that the minute they come out, their prices are at least 5 years outdated, because it takes the typical publisher about a year to publish a book. It takes the typical author about a year to write a book. So that means it's already 2 years old. And nobody writes a price guide without years of pricing data. So for years, price guides have been out of date. Now, during the 80s and 90s, when prices were going up, it was okay, because a lot of times when the price guide came out, your things were worth more than the book said. But for the last 15 years, we've seen a decline in most areas of antiques and collectibles. So if you go to the library today and get a price guide, those prices are totally outdated.
So when someone comes to you with an item, jewelry or dolls or furniture, you cover that too? You
Sure.
cover everything? Okay. So you don't have any specialty in appraising?
I'm good with most areas. I'm not so good with Asian antiquities. Okay, I can't read Asian, Chinese, Japanese, whatever. There's a lot of things I don't know about that. So that's not one of my areas of specialty. Oriental rugs. I'm good with rugs, but I can't tell you if it was made in India or Iraq or Iran. I can't tell you what the weave is. So certain things I have to defer to more specialists, but most things I'm okay with.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
People want to know how much their antiques are worth. If they've had it for a long time or they inherited or whatever, where they're from and how old they are. Is age one of an item somewhat more valuable than others?
Actually, no, Patty. You know what is going to really determine the value of our antiques today?
What?
Whether the next generation is interested in owning it or not.
Huh.
Okay, and I go through this with my classes. You sat through one of my classes, and I always explain to my class that if you want the most amount of money for your things, you have to do the most amount of work. I tell people what you paid for something has absolutely no bearing on what it's worth, and age doesn't mean anything. The biggest determinant of value today is there a market that's interested in it. And as so many people our age have gotten older, we don't buy as much as we used to. We're doing most of the selling. And the younger generation, if they want it, you'll see some good prices. If they don't want it, it's probably going to flop.
So it's the popularity of an item.
Exactly. I mean, explain to me right now why certain comic books were worth 100 times more money than the best piece of Victorian furniture you've ever seen.
Yeah.
The younger generation could care less about Victorian. They're more interested in comic books, vintage video games, vintage sports cards, vintage Beatles cards, that kind of stuff. So it all depends on what they're interested in.
So nowadays, what's hot? Video games, like you said, or?
That is one thing. There's an adage in our business. We collect what we grew up with.
Right.
I didn't grow up with video games. I grew up before they were invented. So that's not really my cup of tea, whereas my kids are interested in video games. I was more of a Hopalong Cassidy kind of guy.
Yeah.
Okay. My generation collected Hopalong Cassidy, Rin Tin Tin, the Rifleman, Shirley Temple was more my mom's generation. Okay.
That's same here, man.
Yeah. Whereas today's generation is more interested in
Technology,
video games, comic books, TV shows.
Right.
Can I tell you a quick story?
What?
On my radio show one time, I had my grandkids on who were ages 10 and 12. And we did a segment called Future Young Collectors. Now, my grandkids are 10 and 12. I said to them, who's Justin Bieber? Who's Justin Timberlake? Who's Taylor Swift? Of course, they knew. I said to them, who's Shirley Temple? I don't know. Who's Bob Hope, Bing Crosby? I don't know. I don't know. And my point to my listeners was, your Shirley Temple collectibles are only going to go down in value because the older they get, the fewer people are going to be remembering them or being interested in them.
And the ones who do remember are dying off.
Exactly. It's like, how interested are you and I in John Philip Sousa music? You know, it was of the generation, but not our generation.
It's nice to be able to bring the past back, especially all the wonderful entertainers and all that, for the younger generation to rediscover.
Fortunately, there are some people who are doing a good job of preserving it. There's a guy on my radio show named Lou Powers, and he's been on radio for 50 years.
Wow.
And he preserves cinema and music, pianos, old sheet music, movie posters, old movies, things like that. And he preserves it and he shares it with the younger generation, those who are interested in it. Well, the younger generation will never know who I am, but I'm going to keep going as long as I enjoy doing it.
And as long as I do my shows, you're going to be immortal.
Right? Patty, I joke with people, I've got the best job in the world because I get paid to look at other people's treasures. Whether I'm teaching classes, doing appraisals, going to do antique roadshow type events in person, I get to look at some of the funnest things in the world. I have a radio show. You'll like this. I have a radio show.
What's it called?
And one of my live classes one time, I explained that I had a radio show, and a woman raises her hand very meekly. And she says, Mr. Ivankovich, you have a face that's made for radio. And I went,
Yeah,
it came out wrong. She was so cute, but I'm not a TV kind of guy, except on Patty's show, Patty's page.
hello. you authored a book. Oh, you have authored a book, have you now? And it's about the material value of things. And what's the title of it?
Well, Patty, I've written about 20 books between hardcover, between paperbacks and ebooks, electronic books. I've done about 20 books, but I am in the Guinness World Book of Records. I'm winking at you. I'm in the Guinness Book of World Records of having written the most books that have made the least amount in royalties in history.
Oh boy.
Most of my books are very general, a very small niche. I've done about 8 books on Wallace nutting, hand-colored photographs. I did a whole bunch of books on early 20th century hand-colored photography. I've done 2 books on fundraising auctions, and my last book, which is still available on Amazon, is called Home Downsizing in 4 Easy Steps. I help people who want to downsize deal with their house contents.
Wow, we could have used you about 13 or 20 some odd years ago.
I hear that all the time.
Let's talk briefly about the recent one that you, how you wrote it and how long it took, and when was it released?
It's probably 7, 8 years old. It's not. I haven't written a book in a while. But the best description of what I do as a home downsizer is this: take your house, turn it upside down, and shake it. If it falls out, I deal with it. If it doesn't fall out, the realtor is going to deal with it. I help people deal with their stuff. And most people have a bunch of stuff in their house. They know some of it's good. They know some of it's junk. And there's a lot of stuff in the middle. They don't know what it is. And that's where I come in. I go out to their homes and I help them understand what it's worth and what their options are for getting rid of it. That's basically what I do.
I remember showing you, when I was doing a Zoom thing with you, an article, items that had 2 spouts, and it was a Native American wedding thing. I only got that, like I said, for $2, and it was originally, but how much would it be? Between $15 and $30, depends on what year and what condition and all, and whether it's popular or would it still be popular?
Well, it all depends. Condition is huge. In today's market, it almost has to be in perfect condition for it to have much value. But also it has to be sold. If you want good money, your things have to be sold in the right venue. And what I mean by that, Patty, is, for example, around us, there's an auction house. They've been in business for maybe 100 years. They don't advertise. They're having an auction every Saturday, and those who want to go there on Saturday, not knowing what they're going to see. So if Patty has a $100,000 painting, if you consign it to them, no one knows it's there except the people who go there that Saturday. So there's lots of things that go for really cheap prices, which is what keeps people coming in. But if I've got a $100,000 painting, I don't want it sold at that auction house. I want it sold where it's going to be sold online, advertised, and I can get the most amount of money for me, not attracting the most number of bidders into the auction house. I have a friend who's up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. He runs a bid board where he has 6,000 things a month that it's not a live auction, but it's bidding just like at a silent auction. He's been doing that for years. That's a very successful format for him.
So, which of all the antiques and all, what are your favorite subjects in the antiques?
I'm still partial to early 20th century hand-colored photographs. I have maybe 100 around the house, but I used to run auctions for 30 years. My wife and I ran the nutting and early 20th century hand-colored auctions, but that market has diminished because people my age either stopped buying or bought less, and their kids don't want it. So that's passion. I like good furniture, except my house is full. I don't have much room. Just yesterday, I bought an 1815 orange Hopkins tall case clock, made in Litchfield, Connecticut, 1815. Patty, the movement, the works are wood. Okay, the mechanism is wood. It's that early, and yet it's probably going to do less than $1,000. Not because it's not worth more, but nobody wants tall case clocks today in the younger generation because you got to keep winding it. and it makes too much noise and it chimes and then, you know, I mean, all those things that it's a perfect example of something that should be worth a lot more than it is.
That's sad, really. Like I have an item here. It's sandstone. Soapstone, I'm sorry. And this was done, signed underneath here, but it's all black on brown. It's old. It's from Baffin Island up in Canada. I
Okay.
received that when I was in my 20s. It's about 40 some odd years ago. And it's supposed to be a mother embracing
Now,
her
who was the
child.
artist, Patty?
Well, I'm trying to, the last part of it is Noy. No.
I need more than that. Now, first of all, I can't research it here for you. I have to research it offline.
Yeah.
In my business, collectors collect the name. You could have two almost identical pieces. One is by a noted artist and one is by an unknown artist.
Mm-hmm.
One by the noted artist will do 100 times more than the other one. So somehow we need to identify the name of that artist in order to identify proper value. Otherwise, it's just a decorative accessory, if you want to call it that.
It's an oldie but goodie.
And that's one of the most frustrating parts about art,
Yeah.
is that you have these artists who did such beautiful work,
Mm-hmm.
and then they could not write their name legibly.
Oh,
Makes it hard.
well, I collect dolls, and they're old one too. I should wish I could show you one right now. Oh, later we can. This is my doll.
We had a doll. We did a Zoom Antiques Roadshow last night in Fall River, Massachusetts. I was in Pennsylvania, but the show was in Massachusetts. And one of the ladies had a doll, and it was marked KS in the back of the neck.
Yeah.
Well, we were able to do some quick research, and it was a Kestner, Kestner. I told her what to look for. She gave me the model number. It was a Kestner 146,
Right.
and it was marked Germany. So we knew it was an early biscuit doll from Germany.
Mm.
So we did some quick Google and WorthPoint and eBay searches, and we resolved that the doll, she could probably sell it for $300 or $400.
Mm.
But when you looked at Google, the asking prices were $800 and $900. And so we had to explain to people that value is what you can sell it for, not what a dealer is asking.
And if someone really likes something, they'll buy it no matter what the price.
That's right. That's right. So if a dealer's asking $900 and I like it, I'll pay them their $900. But just because I pay $900 doesn't mean I could turn it around and sell it for $900. I'm only going to be able to sell it to the person who values it the most. If I can
That's
give
how
you,
it goes.
if I'm going to give you an example, Patty, you and I are both interested in that Kestner doll at an auction. You're willing to pay $10,000 on it. I'm willing to pay $1,000. How much do you have to pay to buy that doll? $1,000 plus one bid, right?
Mm.
If you were willing to pay $10,000, I was willing to pay $9,000. You would have to pay $9,000 plus one bid.
Mm.
So let's say you successfully buy that doll. Okay, you're out of the bidding equation. You're not going to buy another one. So if another one comes up and I'm interested in acquiring it, and Mary Jane down the street's interested, but she's only paying $500, then I'll have to pay $600, even though you paid $9,000. The numbers get a little complicated, but my point is there are other factors that determine what things are worth at auction, and that determines the number of bidders interested in it.
Yeah. So what's the most popular, like we said before, is gets the highest bid.
We
And
call it,
even though it's very expensive, way back in the 1600s and that, if that is not desired, then they would not bid on it.
in theory, a rock in your backyard is worth $1 million, is a million years old.
Right.
But just because that rock is 1 million years old doesn't mean it's valuable.
Let's go
Unless-
to painting.
What's that?
Paintings.
Paintings, the painting market, the art market is generally quite hot today for the right artists.
Mm.
Believe it or not, modern art as a group is selling better than traditional art.
Oh.
but it all depends on the artist. A few years ago, somebody paid $500 million for one painting.
Andy Warhol?
It wasn't a Warhol, no. I think it might have been a Da Vinci, I think. But the point was, why did they pay $500 million? Two reasons. Number one, they wanted it, and number two, they could afford it.
So what do you see in the future for you? Still doing what you're doing now?
Yeah. I have no desire to retire. I can't do the things that I used to do. As an auctioneer is a glorified mover, because the auctioneer, unless you're the big auction houses in New York or some of the bigger cities, you've got to go to the house, pack it, get it out, take it to the auction center, unpack it, display it. You become a moving person. And my back at age 70 isn't as strong as it was. I used to help people empty their houses. I can't do that anymore. So because of that, I've gravitated more to the appraisal work. We do a lot of buying and selling privately. And I'll do this as long as I can. When I can't, then I'll stop.
What would you like to say to my audience to encourage them in your line of work and to help them, especially with something like what you're working with, if they want to get into your line?
What I would say, first of all, if you like antiques and collectibles, there hasn't been a better time to buy them in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. They are reasonably priced. There are new collections coming back out into the market. As our generation acquired huge collections, we're now deassessing, we're selling, and they're coming out into the market. And the younger generation is not as interested in it. So a great time to buy.
What is your website? I see what's it worth behind you.
Okay, what's it worth is our Zoom appraisal program that we do. My primary website right now is www.zoom, Z-O-O-M, FaceTime, F-A-C-E-T-I-M-E, appraisals.com. Zoom, FaceTime, appraisals.com. And I can do appraisals for anybody in the country, Patty. On Zoom. Just like you and I are talking here. People show me things. I have a 32-inch monitor. I can make them my whole screen. I can see it really well. Yeah. And then for things in the other room, we terminate the Zoom meeting and they walk around with their iPhone and show me pictures of furniture and heavy things in other parts of the house. And we appraise things that way. Oh,
I can do that instead of bringing them up from top of the bookcases and everything.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, clearly we charge for our services because we are professional appraisers. We just ran our weekly radio show this Friday morning. We do it live. That website is askmiketheappraiser.com. And today's show, we talked about musical collectibles, and we talked books with two dealers from the Factory Antique Mall in Virginia, which is America's largest antique mall.
Thank you so much for coming on to my show, Michael. You did a very, very great job in describing about antiques and what they're worth and why they're worth. Thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed my interview with you, sir.
Thank you, Patty. Thanks for having me. Look forward to seeing the show, and thanks for having me on. If ever I can help you out, just let me know.
Don't worry, you will be. So I'm saying goodbye to my audience. See you next week.
Take care, folks. Thank you.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us always, for the rest of our lives.